Shut up and sit down.
The current state of politics is unsustainable, politically, economically.
You still have distrust there.
We all come from very different places.
Man, we don't want the government to do a damn thing.
We deserve better.
People have to have the information in front of them.
It is about supporting, platforming, and assisting the people who are out here actually doing the fight.
There you go. Like, just promote people who are doing something. Volunteer to work with people who you like. And
take an issue that's important to you and do something.
You are part of that declaration against tyranny.
This conversation gives me a little more hope for the future.
The one, the only
fight for liberty. This is the cherry on top.
Hello fighters, welcome back to Fight for Liberty Live. I'm your host David Fite, and today we are going to be diving into the issue of why every Libertarian Party state affiliate needs a legislative director more than just a policy director or, someone that's going through the ideology of it, but someone that's actually taking the action to change legislation in the state house. So I'm really excited to talk about that with Samantha Brown from the Libertarian Party of Maine. But first, we are, of course, going to talk a little bit about our sponsors. First up, we've had them since pretty much the beginning, nuggofknowledge.com. It is the place to go for all of your legal-ish cannabis products. We've got Delta-8, CBD, CBG, a little bit of, I think they have Delta-9 gummies now. They're coming out with a whole bunch of new stuff. Every time I talk to Mr. Berman over there, he's telling me about new stuff that they're adding to the menu. So go on over, nuggofknowledge.com, promo code FSM to help out the show, the network, and get a little bit of a discount. And then when you're done ordering that, you can go on over to bloodoftyrants.wine. So if you're a little bit stoned, but you still want to be a little bit drunk as well, and sip on the blood of your enemies while taking down the tyrannical state and still enjoying a nice night in at home, Blood of Tyrants wine is the thing for you. So bloodoftyrants.wine, that promo code is F4L. Go on over, order like 17 bottles tonight because you know you need it to get through the rest of this winter. But without further ado, the one, the only, Samantha Brown. Welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you for having me.
It is a pleasure. So I always like to start out with a sort of testimonial question. So I want to know, where did you first hear the word libertarian?
It was kind of always in the noise for me for a little bit. I don't know. I evolved naturally to it with all of the things that I've been seeing and eyes, aside from, the Libertarian Party or people, just dealing with health care and the legislative stuff, because I started roughly 10 years ago with cannabis with my daughter. And so just see with my own eyes, and then organically coming over and hearing a little bit of the Korean stuff and hearing more and more, it kind of and then all the kind of me started talking about it, and I think I just kind of morphed into it.
I can definitely relate on that one. It's always kind of been in the atmosphere around me. People have called me one before I ever knew what it meant.
See, one of the bigger things that stopped me a little bit from libertarian at first, I felt that I needed to use the government in order to protect us. And I didn't realize until later in reading it and no, it's actually that the government that's hurting us the most, and the reason why we need free markets is the real reason where we need protection, and not through the government. And so that reality kind of shifted. That's where I started to really fall down that rabbit hole of understanding the Austrian economics part of it.
Yeah, I can relate there. I had a lot of bad ideas still when I came into the party and the movement. I was talking about it a lot last week with Brian Nichols, that when I ran for office for the first time as a libertarian, I was still like super nationalist, pro-war. Like I thought we should have bombed China during the Korean War to just like won it outright. So it's I feel like we don't give people enough of a chance to kind of evolve and learn through why the government isn't the best option.
Yeah, you know, I've always anti-government soul, if you will, but there was still me that felt like, okay, well, if I can use the government to protect me from the government, then that would. And I realized, like, you know, it just that's not the way that it works.
Right. So what legislation has the LP Maine had an effect on so far?
Well, I've been with LPME for roughly, so this is the season where I'm really getting into it. This is the first where I was able to start my planning and get legislation put forward. This particular year, we're working on an act to protect the minor political parties that seek of status. That's like a huge one for us, but it's not that into the normal person. It's great for us though. It basically makes it oh gosh, I wish that I could. It changes the numbers, halves the numbers for registered voters to be qualified for a party. And then this year we're also working on keeping the National Guard home, the Fourth Amendment Protection Act, and something that I'm specializing in, that I know more of the nitty-gritty, is cannabis is a Mainer's constitutional.
Yes, I talked to Harrison a little bit about that one when he was on the show. I love the approach that you guys have to that piece of legislation.
Yeah, definitely. I had a couple libertarians in my ear that, you know, said, well, we do have some laws here that this could work well with. And, you know, I started researching, and I was like, you know what, this is what we got to do.
Can you dive in and explain for the viewers that didn't get the deep dive I did from Harrison after the show, how exactly that piece of legislation went?
Yeah, so basically Maine has a new constitutional amendment as of last session, and it is called the right to food. And it basically allows anybody, which I can't even believe that we are having this conversation, but it puts that our right to grow our own food for our own well-being is a constitutional right. And so cannabis is something I grow for my daughter, especially because it helps her with her seizures. And it is, in fact, well-being. And right now we have plant counts. We can 6 plants for medicinal and 3 plants recreational use. And as far as I'm concerned, if you need 10 plants grow in the summer to get you through the year, you shouldn't have the government telling you, no, you can only grow 6. And I want to secure that in legislation. People don't have to trial. Because if somebody got caught with 10 plants, they'd have to go to trial. And or I mean, that's awful.
Yeah.
You know, we're putting our, say a patient that has cancers treating themselves with cannabis, and have to then, if they got caught with more plants, they would then have to go to trial. Let's just get that out of the language. Let's repeal that, you know, and let's clarify cannabis is a Mainer's constitutional right.
I love it. I hope that we can see way more of these kinds of things going forward, where, you know, we can take the progressive pro-government kind of like manipulative argument towards things and sneak in the other things that they weren't expecting us to add in, and, you know, actually get some legitimate rights back to the people here.
Absolutely. Sometimes you can use the system as a tool of favor every now and then.
Mm-hmm. So you have talked a little bit about what you guys have on the docket for 2023. You said you've got the cannabis one, the minor parties one. Actually, I think you already covered all of them. I don't even have to ask this question. You already answered this question for me. So I guess my question is, which one are you the most excited about?
Actually, that's hard for me to answer, because I have passions against government in general. So I might get fired up about something. Like, there's just a list of things that I could just get totally fired up about and be like, go at this, let's do this. But then you come to a point where you just can't, because you don't have the time, and you don't have the brain power. There's a lot of that are sitting on my plate, and they're all moving, and so it's hard to just sit back and say there's one. But cannabis, hands down, is where I specialize in, because my daughter has been using it since 2013. I've been fighting since 2013 for patients and to further along the rights of for cannabis use, and that's where I know, right, where I really specialize in for myself. And I would also say the vaccine issue, something that the Libertarian Party has decided to take on as a fight right now, but that's only because we just don't have the resources for people, and it's like, okay, we can choose which ones that we could really hammer down on. I can't, and I need, to work on, people like Harrison, and others that, like, he's really good with the keeping of the National Guard home and the minor political parties bill. He can get all of that information together, as where the cannabis stuff is where I really shine. And cannabis itself is really just a moving parts to it, because there's tons of bills on it every session, and we're able to get more rights while fighting the department. And there's all of these different groups that are wanting to do stuff, and it's really that cannabis. If I had cannabis, I could probably take on more than one thing, but yeah, so cannabis is basically really strong working on.
Definitely. I mean, it's a hell of a drug. Like, it's not a drug, and I tend to not use that word, especially on the show, to describe it. It's a medicine, and honestly, it was one of the things that brought me to the Libertarian Party even before I ever smoked. because I understood that it shouldn't be illegal. Like, I had enough people around me that smoked, and not a lot, just like, 3 or 4 kind of outcast friends, because I was still like a goody two shoes Christian when I first became a libertarian. I had like, a couple of friends that did it, and I was like, it's bad. It's like bad for you. It's probably like, gonna make you sin or whatever, like alcohol, but it shouldn't be illegal. Like, alcohol's not illegal, tobacco's not illegal. Why is this? And so the LP was the only party that offered me guns and weed on the same ticket with Gary Johnson, and that's what brought me in. A year and a half before I ever smoked any cannabis at all.
Yeah, I think just even fighting with cannabis and knowing the lie, like, I think that was one of the major things. Well, there were a couple, but clearly one that was eye-opening for me, that showed how much of a lie they made with saying a virus it is, and just doing the research back on that and the prohibition. It was like, what? They're liars. So if they're lying about this, then what else are they lying about? Mm-hmm. And knowing that the Libertarian parties, was less government, was kind of where I was at. Like, I don't want government in my life telling me how much I smoke, or how much I can grow, or the medicine that I can and can't make. The list goes on and on and on, and I just don't want that in my life. Like, just get the government out of my life.
Yeah, I feel like an issue that gets a lot of pushback is like abolish the FDA, right? Something that, a lot of the normies are like, what, how, like, that's crazy. How could you even like get to that point? And it's like, spend 5 years just spending 4 or 5 hours a day being bombarded on Facebook and Twitter and from every friend you have, because these are all of our friends, right? And just constantly being told of all of the terrible things that the government has done, all the bad things have been passed through the FDA, all the terrible shit the CIA has done, the food pyramid is a lie, like all of this stuff. You're not gonna get me to trust the FDA.
Yeah, like, abolish all of the departments that have the 3-letter acronym. I'm okay with that.
Amen.
Let's do it.
So what really sets you apart from like a policy director within the party, so that makes it more of an actual working with the state house and the state senate and actually getting legislation moving versus kind of drafting it and thinking about it, editing what policy would be on your website?
Basically, in a nutshell, nobody cares about the Libertarian Party. Like, just doesn't care. Like, okay, sure, we have some policy and stuff, but people in general, they just don't care about organizations. What they care about is when their emotions are attached to something. So, like, think about, like, I was watching Spike Cohen's videos this morning, and they were, like, his videos were really getting to me. Like, it made me want to get up and fight. Like, it's tough. And he does such awesome work. Mm-hmm. And I want fights. I want to show up to the fight. And I want to tell these are the fights that we're working on, and this is why you need to get, like, pissed off about them. Why should we keep the guard home? Mm-hmm. Like, what to get people to understand, like, what would piss people off to get involved? And I basically want, pick the fights that we can do. I would love to pick all the fights if we had all of the people, but we don't, really. And want to show up. I want to really start marketing why we're picking these fights, picking the emotions, and that's how you build your coalition. And I think that's what sets me apart from just writing policy. Really picking the fight.
I like it. Because you make a good point there that like not a lot of people really care about what we have to say, but something that would make people care about what we had to say a lot more and a lot faster would be being able to say, hey, we are the people that sponsored, like wrote and pushed through the Defend the Guard bill that, you know, is protecting our National Guard in this state from being thrown into needless unconstitutional wars. That's a thing we actually did. Then people might actually listen. And, you know, you guys have already had a few successes in the past with, you know, like constitutional carry. You know, there's actually some weight behind what the party has to say. I think probably even more than in some of the states where there are maybe 1 or 2 countywide elected officials or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, really just, like I said, picking that fight, bringing attention to it, and saying, like, we are the ones that are having this fight. We that are bringing attention, and this is what we're doing. This is what we're doing, and we want you to get involved, even if that means registering to vote or for me, you know, I love the Libertarian, but I don't care what the label is. I want to, my goal is to change policy, and I really want to put forth and do actions that work. And you know, there, you know, a couple writing these letters to the legislator, and they write a heartfelt letter, and like that's good and all, but I want the power of numbers, and the Libertarian Party doesn't have that, and that's what I want to build. So regardless of party, of whose party it is, I want to start stirring up trouble for these that screw us over every year and then take credit for how awesome their stimulus check and stuff. And like, I want to powerful in that sense. So I want to be powerful to not be powerful. Because I want to get rid of government. You know, I don't want to see these monopolies happen, and that happen worse and worse every year. And I just want that power to tell them and shut down the government. I mean, I don't know. That's not exactly going to happen, but I think as a libertarian and being bold and bringing that bold message, like I don't want a middle message. I want a bold message and say, this is why what we're doing. And I really love, well, it's a numbers game too. Like when we look at the, basically, like, we've got half a third of Democrats, we have a third of the Republican, and then we have a third of unregistered or unenrolled voters. And the Democrats are going after the unenrolled because they're the swings that they're trying to pull. The Libertarian Party right now doesn't really have much of anything, so and we need to start growing a lot more. And I think by putting out our fights, making a ruckus, making a ruckus somehow. And I don't have all the answers for that, and I love to brainstorm and getting the message out there a little bit more. But I want to grow with the fights that we make.
Hell yeah. I saw actually just today on my Facebook, there was a you mentioned like letters to the legislators, and I actually filled out like form letter submission today for my legislators here in New York to fight the flavored tobacco ban that they're trying to push through. Basically, it would ban flavored tobacco and raise the taxes on all cigarettes $1 a pack, like just jump up. So it would be like $14.50 or something like that. Even upstate New York, and then New York City would end up being like almost $20 a pack. And like this is something that when last time New York tried to do it, the Libertarian Party was actually like very involved in the fight against it. At least like on the ground, there was a couple of protests in the city that we were a big part of. But this one, I was glad to fill the thing out because I believe in it, and I want to send a letter to my legislators to tell them not to do this. I know it's not likely to change their vote, but who knows. But I really wish that I wasn't giving my name and number and email to a Republican list. I wish it was a Libertarian list.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like I want to set it up so that it's so super easy for people, because even myself, like I am so about a lot of these things, and I would love to tell my legislator about everything, and there are a lot of things that slip through the cracks because I just don't have time to write them a heartfelt letter. But what I want to set it up where people can just push a button, because that's all they have time for. They need something, has everything all pre-thought out, pre-done, click a button, go. And so I think having that angry mob of people, of legislators' constituents, knowing that this is what they want, puts a lot more pressure on them.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can get 1,000 people to write a pre-made message versus 1 or 2 people writing a heartfelt letter, speaks a large message.
Mm-hmm.
And that means they're looking for votes.
Yeah.
And that's, if they start that their constituents are getting pissed, then they're more apt to change. And I'm okay with blood, and I've done it. I've had protests in one kind of proud example that I have is Representative Chiazzo here in Maine. He was with the department, the Office of Marijuana Policy at the time, and that's how he voted. He voted in favor of them. And what I did was I grabbed people, passionate people, and we went and we held signs up in his neighborhood educating his vote. He was in favor of he supports corporate monopoly. And I wanted to do more with that. I want to keep doing stuff like that. I want to embarrass these guys, if they're working to further monopoly, like, yeah, let's go after them. And it also, he didn't run for office this year. He was a freshman legislator at the time, and he didn't run again. So, I don't know if it's because I, stirred up the pot in his area, but I'd like to think that maybe it was me.
That is fantastic. That's what we need to be doing. We need to be bullying these people out of office.
Yeah.
It's possible. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's possible. Enforcement.
Yeah, and I feel like they ask for it when they run for office. You know, a lot of people talk about like doxing and harassing and all of these other things. Like when I ran for office, I ran in 2019 for New York City Council, and you know, I didn't get a whole lot of harassment because I took third place in a three-way race and nobody really knew who I was, and I got like less than 400 votes, and you know, it was not a super successful campaign, so I didn't get too much, but I definitely got harassed at events. And you know, I went to protests against building new jails in New York City, and I had people tell me that like I had no idea what I was talking about. Like people that were with me on my side of the protest heckling me, like I wasn't a speaker, I wasn't anything like that. I was just there to support, and you know, I was actually part of the de-escalation team for a lot of those protests. And so, you know, my job was to just kind of like, you know, separate people, make sure that no one is getting arrested, that, you know, didn't plan on getting arrested, because obviously there were actions that were taken where people knew they were probably going to go to jail that day. But I was getting told that like I shouldn't even be there, like stupid white boy, like what do I know about like what Rikers Island is like? You know, I've been there, but none of them knew that, right? I don't super publicize that, and you know, I wasn't just gonna say that right then and there. But you know, I feel like you ask for a certain level of responsibility and, you know, attack when you run for office. And, you know, we're not crossing any lines by standing in people's neighborhoods, educating their voters on who they are, what they stand for. You know, attack ads and things like that, you know, it's not an attack ad if it's the truth.
I have no problem telling the truth.
Hell yeah.
I have problems with the lies that they tell, though.
So I have one off-topic question from the missus, because she doesn't think my show is interesting enough as it is. It's too political for her. So she wants to know, if you could be any animal, what would you be?
I could be any animal? One of my favorite animals is horses. I love their beauty, their strength, and their personality.
Big fan.
I think I'd be a horse. Or I said, I think I'm going to come back as my cat in the next life, because he's got it made.
I like it. I'm also a big horse person. My sister grew up as like a super big horse girl, so she often dragged me along to various things like horse camp and different events and like riding shows and stuff like that. So always been a big fan of horses too.
Yeah, I had horses growing up, and it was an amazing experience. One of my prouder parts of my childhood.
I can imagine. I always jealous of because I grew up kind of in the country, so like a lot of my neighbors had like big farms and ranches and horses, and you know, we just lived on what used to be a farm, kind of like sectioned off. We had like a huge backyard. It was great, but not horses. So I was always really jealous of my friends with horses.
Yeah. Well, see, I love the farms, and if I could have all the animals, I would.
That's what, you know, I'm a lover of the city, and you know, I work in finance most of the time when I'm not doing political work, and I kind of live in like a small town, and my wife really likes that vibe. But there's some days where I'm just like, you want to just like get a cabin in the mountains where we have to like ride a horse down the mountain to like get to the one store that's down there that sells all the things, you know, like somewhere in like bumfuck Colorado. and she usually seems down for the plan. So I don't know. That might be in the near future.
That sounds like a good plan. I like to hibernate a lot myself, so.
Mm-hmm. She's a real bookie. So like if she could just sit by a fire and read a book for like 12 hours a day while taking care of the boys, like she would be set for life. So I don't know. We can do some farming, grow our own food, and just be good.
I love research. So the one thing about the internet is that there's research right at your fingertips. So I would be hard pressed to not be able to have internet. But I could do that. I could sit by the fire and research and read. Or if I could have all the books come to me, I mean, that would be pretty cool too.
There you go. Yeah, I would definitely need internet. I wouldn't be able to give up. My problem is I would have to give up a lot of activism if I chose that kind of a life. And so that's the conundrum. Like I could do the show from solitude, but I would end up feeling like a hypocrite after a while, that it's like, you guys should do all this stuff while I sit here by the fire and chill.
I go through that myself because I think this work is in my soul and I couldn't give it up. And, I was actually having a conversation with Harrison earlier. What would we do without politics? Like, I don't think that I see myself in the near future not having freedom and working towards freedom. And that's the thing too, is that I bitch all the time. And I hear so many people bitching all the time about the government, but nobody wants to do anything about it. And I say that I can't bitch unless I'm willing to work. So here I am, I'm working.
Yeah. I've taken quite a few months off of a lot of the activism that I normally do with getting married, and now I have a baby probably coming within the next week. So there's been a lot of like other things. There's been a lot of other things going on, and there's been a lot of those like kind of nights where I'm just like, man, I wish I was doing more. And I feel like I'm just kind of like bitching from the sidelines. There was like the big anti-war protest on Sunday that there was that whole debate about beforehand, and I'm just like, for the first time in a while, I was like, I'm kind of glad I couldn't go to that and just haven't talked about it, because I could just not be a part of it and just share all the videos afterwards and just like be like, great job guys, way to go. I mean, it ended up being a huge success. I think it was awesome, but I wish I was there, but obviously not going to be a thing.
Yeah, I definitely have ebb and flows with this, and there are times where I'm like, you know what, I have to do something else. Like a month or two, I need to go sit and do nothing. I need to not talk to anybody and work in my garden or tend to my chickens or whatever, or my family. My family needs me. And I just need to put it down for a little while. I need to take that mental break, and then I come back a little bit stronger. And I do, and I'm kind of feeling myself right now. I'm overwhelmed with a lot of the legislation, and I can't put it down now. I have to keep going right now because I've committed myself, but there's going to be a time when the legislation, I'll be able to say, no, I'm not doing anything for now. I need a break.
Mm-hmm. That's fair. We all need a break. God invented the whole 6-day work week thing for a reason. Even if you don't believe in that, I think we all need a break every once in a while to just recharge. However you do that, whether that's out with a bunch of people, which is kind of an ironic way to recharge that I personally love. Like, I'll just go to the mall and just wander by myself because it's just like other people's energy. My wife is like, you're nuts. I'm gonna be over here in a corner where there's no people.
because I definitely need that. I go from being extroverted to introverted. You know, like I just need just don't talk to me. I'll be back with you in like a month.
Yeah, definitely relatable. My friends always get shocked when I hit one of those introverted phases, because it's like, wait, you're the extrovert of the group. You don't do this. What's wrong with you? Are you okay? You want to just like stay home? Are you sure? Like, there's a party going on. Like, you should be there. It's like, I'll be okay. I just wanna be alone.
I'll go to events or whatever, for political stuff. It might be like a weekend event or a 3-day event or something, and I'm constantly going and going and going and talking, but I can maintain that. But then by the end, and I get home and I'm flat out for a good solid 2 days. Like, I'm doing nothing. I'm not even researching. I'm just flat out.
Evan McMahon, Illinois LP, Indiana LP state chair, says breaks are for losers, but I know that he's going to want one after his term as chair, so he can suck it.
Yeah, come back to us and let us know how that works.
He is a great activist that has put in a lot of years of work. But yeah, I don't know. Breaks are maybe for losers, but I enjoy taking one from time to time.
I come back stronger.
Mm-hmm.
I really think I come back stronger after a break.
Yeah. Even like the Great Spike, which I feel like every show that I do has like at least a little segment where my guest is like, Spike is just the best. But you know, he took a decent sized break at the end of the 2020 campaign, and a lot of people were like, what's gonna happen to Spike? And he was like, I'll be back, just like give me a bit, like I haven't seen my wife in a minute, like just chill.
Yeah, it really does take a mental toll on you. I actually have a friend that was running for Senate, and you know, I reached out to her a couple days ago, and she's like, I'm so sorry, but I haven't talked to you in a while, but this Senate race just really kicked my butt, and I you know, I've been kind of taking a break a little bit, so like I get it. Totally get it.
So a little bit back on topic, I want to talk about the, I guess, simplicity of actually getting legislation at least seen by someone and possibly sponsored. How do you guys go about that in Maine? And then maybe we can talk about how we could workshop that with other states.
Well, for me, it was me knowing in Maine, like if I was to go to a different state, I would struggle with this. But me knowing the different legislators in Maine and their history, I was able to approach a couple people, one being Eric Brakey, who was a Republican. I knew that he had worked on the cannabis stuff for in prior sessions that he had been in. I knew that he was in favor of, or he worked on keeping the National Guard home, and I knew a lot that he had preached about liberty type stuff. So regardless that he is a Republican, and Republicans and Democrats are all we have to work with right now. So it was just basically knowing who, and then also feeling out. I know that other people in the party knew of another legislator that was willing to work with us. So going off of that, and then me also just having a little bit of connections already, because I've been doing it for a while, and I've been in the arena to be able to approach them for different people for co-sponsors.
Yeah, I I can't love on Eric Brakey enough. He's a good friend and an amazing person. I'm so glad that he's back in office and doing the work that he's able to do. But I feel like to your point of just kind of knowing the people, I don't think that it's as hard as people might think to find someone like that, that like yourself, that does kind of know some people and is able to just get those conversations going, because that's all it really is. It's just about getting a conversation about what could happen here with a bill. And I was actually really shocked to find with the Tulsi Gabbard campaign how many people were similarly minded with us, and honestly a lot of them ended up being more similarly minded with me than her. A lot of these people were somewhat libertarian or like kind of independent Republican activists that had pull in their community, had access to legislators and endorsements and things like that were willing to help out the campaign, that I would love to be able to tap for a mission like this, where they have at least 2 or 3 friends in office that they could talk to about this, maybe even one on each side of the aisle, and get it to be a bipartisan issue. And even here in New York, there are people who have, I think, at least a public following. Someone like Larry Sharpe could get that meeting even just because he carries 100,000 votes behind him. And so I think a lot of states should look more into this kind of approach where, like we talked earlier, you end up opening up a lot more avenues for getting name recognition, getting publicity, getting legitimacy from the average voter by actually accomplishing something here that ends up maybe actually being easier than getting someone elected, because it's really just about making 2 or 3 connections and a well-placed, well-written bill.
Yeah, and as you were talking, I was also thinking that if I didn't have the connections and the pull, no, I'm not saying that I have pull, but if I didn't know people or who to go to, I think just calling different legislators. Luckily in Maine, and I hear it's not the same in other states, that we can still talk to our legislator fairly easy, and giving them a call. Many have, believe it or not, many have actually returned my call. And my personal legislator, she does respond as well. And I think maybe if that she didn't support the issue, she potentially could put me towards somebody else and try to make new connections that way. So I think maybe just calling your basic legislator and or representative or senator and feeling it out, making a couple phone calls and saying, hey, if it's not you, then who else? But that's, like I said, in Maine, I've heard differently that other states don't have that great of connections between legislators and their constituents. So that's all I know is Maine.
Yeah.
So
I feel like there's a lot of states where maybe it's not as good as Maine, because Maine is probably in the top 5. New Hampshire is probably the best at like being like able to talk to your representative. Maine, I don't know, probably second best from what I've heard. But like there's a lot of states that are somewhere in a medium zone where it's not something that's a given, but with enough diligence and calling a couple of people, calling around, figuring out who has a history of supporting specific issues that you're trying to kind of piggyback on top of or something like that. And it's never too late to start building those connections. If you're watching this and you're like, oh, but like Samantha already knew a bunch of people, and like I don't know anybody, and no one in our state party does, and so we could never like have someone do this. Okay, maybe it's not something where you're sponsoring bills this year. This year, you're pushing through petitions and gathering email lists and phone number lists and a list of people that you can bring with you when you do start getting those meetings. And, then you can start writing legislation, sponsoring stuff within the next 2-3 years. This is not something that has to happen immediately. And again, it's never too late to start building those connections, making those phone calls. It doesn't have to be your representative. If your state is huge, like mine, if I'm trying to do a cannabis thing, I'm probably not going to call my, minority leader, Republican assemblyman. I'm going to call someone from New York City or Albany or Buffalo or somebody like that that's gonna sponsor this bill, because the Republicans will kill it instantly. It's just what they have to do. I kind of respect it at this point. Like, it's just a partisan issue. I don't blame the Republicans for being anti-cannabis at this point, because they just have to be. It's one of their last issues in New York is like, well, if you're gonna have it, we're gonna regulate it. And it's like, okay, fine, whatever. Like, I'm gonna have a better chance doing a deregulation bill through the Democrats, which is nuts.
Yeah, well, and I'm not saying that I'm a somebody now, but I was a nobody when I first started, and I didn't know what a legislator was. That's embarrassing to say, but back when I started, I didn't know how the process was. I didn't know who to connect to, and I remember we were having issues with the hospital, because my daughter was in the hospital a lot, and we couldn't bring our cannabis medicine in the hospital. I mean, I did, and I, caused a lot of stirs and stuff, which kind of looking back at it risked a lot of stuff with DHHS and whatnot. But somehow Senator Eric Brakey found out or figured it out, and that was like the first time that I had met him or knew who he was. He's like, hey, let's do something to fix that. And so he sponsored a bill, and then it kind of just started unfolding from there. Another thing that I wanted to do was I wanted to get cannabis in schools for medical patients that were students. And I don't even remember who sponsored that. It may have been Eric as well. I can't remember. But I don't know. It all just kind of started falling together. And it kind of I started building upon that. So, yeah, I mean, just doing something.
We can shout out Eric Brakey again for being awesome.
I'm always willing to talk with people too if anybody has an interest in any specific questions that I could help them navigate through their system. I'd definitely be willing to talk with people about that as well.
Right. And before we wrap up, I definitely want to give you a chance to, tell people a little bit more about how to get involved with LP Maine specifically, and the legislative team. If you are in need of any, backup and assistance through any of these things, let people know.
Yeah. So one of my greatest hurdles is lack of people and lack of resources and lack of money. One thing that I really would love to do, and I was talking with Harrison earlier, is being able to make social media content, especially videos. And I also need I need research. I need people that can research different topics, put it together on paper in bullet points so we can get the knowledge out there, because that takes a lot of time and a lot of work that I personally don't have. And if anybody has a has something that they really want to work on, I would absolutely love to get somebody connected and give them the tools that they need to work on and become a leader and doing to passing legislation. Because like I said, I can't do it all. So I would love if somebody had something specific they wanted to bring to LPME and really work for it. I would definitely be willing to coach them and get them through the tools that they need. You can reach out at info@lpme.org is the best way to reach us.
Right. Yeah, and if you just like hate your state affiliate and they went one way or the other in some caucus bullshit or some other drama, you don't live in Maine, you can always get involved anyway. You don't have to be a Maine resident to help edit videos or do social media content. So if you're liking what you're hearing here and it sounds like something cooler than what you've got going on in your local area, help out in Maine, get the experience and figure out how to do it, and then you can help your state bring it forward and move it on. So definitely reach out to them, get involved.
Yeah, like I said, in media, I'm really looking for somebody to edit videos, and I want to work on, like I said before, is working on people's emotions, on why, whatever the reason is, why you should get involved that's really going to trigger somebody's emotions. Like, I am very inspired by Spike Cohen. Here's me. I love Spike Cohen. There's always, you said that one person that, or everybody that says like a little bit of time's got to mention Spike. But anyway, his videos definitely inspire me, and I would love to be able to do some type of work that really triggers people's emotions to want people to get involved. So yeah, if anybody's out there, please reach out.
Yeah, video editors are I think like the most in need thing in the entire movement. Like, everybody needs a Dan Smots budget, but then Dan Smots wouldn't have enough time to do it all. So we need more of him somehow, some way. We'll figure it out. Well, Samantha, thank you so much for coming. This was absolutely fantastic. I love talking about actual legislation and how we can get involved, and what you were saying, take on these fights. So thank you so much.
It was great to be here. It was a great conversation. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And guys, thank you so much for watching. Definitely, like we said, go to lpme.org to get involved, and then come on back here next week. We've got 2 shows back-to-back, Tuesday and Wednesday. I am super excited. Jose Gallison is going to come on and talk about the Oklahoma City bombing and how he got involved in libertarianism and how to kind of take these passion projects and turn it into a message that brings people into the movement. And then after that, we have Mark Pellegrino. Lucifer from Supernatural is coming on to the show to talk about the acting school and the charity that him and his wife run. So definitely follow, like, subscribe, do all the things on all the channels, and come on back next week because it is going to be a fantastic week. Samantha, thanks again. Definitely. I hope to see a lot of great work coming out of LPME soon.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. We'll see you back here next week. Until then, keep up the fight.